Welcome everybody to our 100-year lifestyle chiropractic training call. And once again, a great friend coming to spend some time with us talking about these EHR issues, opportunities, billing opportunities, challenges in the world. It's changing so fast, Brian. So
Yeah,
how the
yeah.
heck how are you keeping up with
Lightning
all of
speed.
this?
Not easy, man. It's not easy. Luckily, I have a great team to keep me abreast of everything that's changing. But it's been a blast. It's been great. It's a great time for us. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
It really is. It's a great time for anybody that's been prepared, doing the right thing, that has been able to see and predict the future in some way, shape, or form. The world is kind of lining up to support our ideas, our visions, and certainly in the world of software, EHR has gone crazy. We get so many calls about EHR, billing. What should I do? Should I go in the cloud? What's the cloud? Am I going to be in the sky? Am I going to have to get on an airplane to see it? What's the difference between that and a server? How does that going to affect my cash flow? So many different questions. And I don't have all those answers. We went with Genesis because it was a cloud-based software, and a lot of companies are trying to move to the cloud. Talk about the what's going on. Why the cloud? Again, I know we've talked about it, but why the cloud, and why is it so difficult for all of these software companies that are driving their long-term customers insane
hmm
because they're trying to shift to the cloud?
Yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot in that little question, but I'll do my best to answer. Well, first, why the cloud? The cloud is way more secure. So for a year, and that's a little problem in a lot of docs' head because there were companies for years that were not in the cloud telling people that it's dangerous to be in the cloud, when in reality, it's more dangerous to not be in the cloud. So if you just think about your patient data and HIPAA and your responsibility to protect your patient's information, what's easier to hack? A sophisticated data center or your practice with a network? And that's the most valuable data there is, right? So if I were a hacker, I would go after the onesie twosie practices, and hack their network. And now the network, keeping up to date on all the security requirements on your network in your office, if you're not in the cloud, that is, it's your responsibility. So if you were not up to date, even on your servers, firewalls, and things like that, which most doctors, I remember when I was in practice, you don't have to really the time to do that. At best, you have a patient that knows about that stuff and comes in periodically and updates that stuff, and hopefully they stay a patient for life, right? So that's one thing, just security. It's way more secure. Of course, there's the access from anywhere kind of concept. You can log into your practice from anywhere. Then you start to have the apps that are synced up. So if you have multiple locations, it's even better. If you want to access data per location from your phone or your app, your tablet or your laptop or your desktop, you can do anything from anywhere. That's really important. The cloud's also really important from again, from a user's perspective, because, well, yeah, I'll go actually back up a little bit there. So it's important from the perspective that many of you have had a client server, what's called a client server system. The server's in your office, in the client's location. And every time a new update comes out for that thing, you're scared to death that when you load it onto your server, it's going to blow your practice up. And if something happens, you're on your own, right? They can't come to your office and fix it. Or at best, they have to remote log in, see what happened, and there's no going back, right? You can't go back to the old version. Well, in the cloud, we're constantly, as you know, Doc, updating the system. But there's version control, meaning, first of all, we don't blast it to our entire network of providers using it. We have a small subset that we release the new update to, and we see what happens. And of course, we're very careful about even doing that. And then we slowly roll it out to other servers across the entire network. And in any one of those updates, there's a way to roll back to the one before, because you never really know. There could be a slight little thing in the workflow that affects only a very small portion of the practices that use Genesis, and you don't find it until the last rollout. And you want to give them the ability to roll back to the one before so that they can continue to work on the system. We can fix the issue and they can go back up to the latest update. Also, the language that, the software language, if you're using a client server system, imagine there's languages that technology is built with, right? I'm not going to get into the specifics, but imagine a software that was built 20 years ago. It was built using a specific language, probably the most advanced language that existed at that time. But those languages change and they're even faster now. Like every year, there can be a whole new thing. The problem is when you build it on a client server type system, that language it's like stuck in, if it's hieroglyphics, for example, that's it. If you want to make an update to the system, it has to be in that language. When you're in the cloud, you can actually technically use multiple languages at the same time and constantly update not just the system and the updates, but the capabilities change over time. The advances that you can make become much greater over time. So we can have at Genesis multiple languages in different parts of the system being used and consistently update the system to the latest language. It's kind of like the analogy I use is being able to build the airplane while it's in the air. You can constantly change any piece of it anytime you want. It's not a simple thing to do, but it's what you do. It's one of the advantages of the cloud.
Right, but as a passenger, you don't really know that all of that is going on behind the
Right.
scenes. You're just riding,
No.
you're along for the ride. And I want to go back just a little bit because you talked about the different languages, the server language versus the cloud language. Why are the companies that were server based, why is it so hard for them to just go into the new cloud language?
Yeah, well, it's not just the language. Language is part of it, but it's, I guess I don't want to use the same analogy, but building a client server system is like building a car. Building a cloud-based system is like building a sophisticated F-16 or whatever the latest is now. It's not the same business. It's literally a totally different business. So everything that applies to building a business that way has to totally change, and they're not equipped to do that. They've never done that before. So it's like you have a chiropractic practice. It's like you building a totally different type of practice that you've never experienced before. The patients are different, their condition is different, what they expect from you is different. It's a totally different business. There's no one-to-one analogy, but it's hard to explain. It's not an easy thing to do. You can't just take the code you wrote for the client server software and just plop it into the cloud. And there's some softwares actually that are saying they're in the cloud, but really it's really not quite in the cloud too. So I won't name names, but there are true cloud-based systems, which we have been since the first day. Which, like you said, at the time we had the vision, we knew this is the way things were going to go. Another really important thing is you can't have artificial intelligence working in that software unless you're in the cloud. It had to have been in the cloud from day one. So that was one of the things we saw 20 years ago. So at the time, the cloud was not accessible to everybody, right? Internet connections were slow in some places or non-existent in some places.
It was dial up.
Right. Nobody really ever even did online banking on a large scale at the time, right? So it was new, but we knew where it was going to be, and we knew it was where we needed to start if we were going to be the best in the future. So at the time, it's kind of scary, like you're doing something, you're pioneering something, and you don't know really how it's going to go. But now we're in the right spot.
Yeah, it's great. And we've talked about this before. I had no idea about the cloud. I just happened to have a brilliant person on my team, Sergio, who was
I remember, yeah.
he was the guy, he was the go-to guy for Google and Microsoft. This is back in 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. And when he came to me in 2003 and said, we need to go into the cloud and move our stuff into the cloud, I had no idea what that meant. And when I would ask patients that were computer software people,
Mhm.
they understood servers and they said, well, no, don't go in the cloud. So there was that whole
Yeah,
contingency that said, no, don't go into the cloud. And
right.
he said, no, Dr. Plasko, everything's going to be in the cloud. Everything's going to. So we did it because of Sergio. I didn't know what I was doing, but it turned out it was a fantastic move for us. So when we were ready to buy software for our new practice, we wanted a origin cloud-based software that we knew we would be able to utilize. And so we're thrilled because we can do it from anywhere. It works, it updates, and we like, oh, okay, that's an update. That's cool. That worked, no problem. And like I just noticed, you updated some of the reports and how they present. And I hadn't
Hmm.
gone in there for a little while, and we had talked about when you're going to update this reports, and then bam, it was like done, and my system never went down. And so
Yeah,
you have a lot of people that are scared to death of making this transition because ultimately, true or not true, ultimately everybody's going to have to transition to the cloud.
right. So yeah, so it is, so you're going to be forced to make a decision one way or the other. If you're on a a client server system, it's going away. You know, I won't name the names. You know the ones, they're the bigger names. You know who you are if you're on that type of system. And
And they're
what they're
going
doing,
away because they're going into the cloud, or they're going away because they don't have any clients left.
one way or the other, they're not going to even continue to support that software. Not that they're doing a great job supporting it now, but they're that it's kind of a force you to make a decision to the cloud version because they're not going to continue to develop improvements, and they're definitely not going to continue to support or fix bugs or any of that stuff. Eventually, that's what you do when you've invested millions of dollars in another version of your product. To have people move to it is you just stop supporting the one that they're on. Eventually, you have to. You can't support two products. So you're going to make a decision, and it's going to be at that point there's not a lot of new systems that are not being built in the cloud, so it's a matter of which cloud system. And my opinion is one that's been there for 20 years. Not This is not their, they're not a couple years old, that they're just trying this thing out.
So in a transition, because again, everybody's going to have to make this transition.
Mhm.
What are the things that chiropractors should look for to ease the transition? Because there's a lot of promises that made, and we get calls all the time, all the time from people that it just is not what they thought it was going to be. What are some of the things that chiropractors should look for to make the transition, to help them make the transition so it is as smooth as possible under the circumstances, especially if you have a big practice?
Yeah, so we've been at this a long time, and we've known for a long time that one of the main reasons people don't choose to go with Genesis is because they just get all the way to that point and they're like, I just don't want to do the work. It's just too, even though this thing is costing me money, because there's a cost associated with other systems, and not in just real dollars for maintenance and all that, but just they're inefficient in a lot of ways. So they're costing you patient retention, they're costing you compliance, they're costing you real money over the lifespan of your practice. So even when it's quantified and they know it, they'll still say, we're saying in some cases, I just can't pull the trigger. It's just too painful. But so what I can tell you what we did. One of the things we've done in the past few years is we implemented a white glove service to take that nightmare. It's not the learning of the new system. It's the transitioning of the patient's demographics, configuring the new schedule, appointment types, scheduling out your patients, getting the x-rays if you do that, getting all that stuff into the new system. Your fee schedules, all that stuff, which is a lot of systems leave it to you to do that. So what we started to do is literally do all that work for you, schedule everything out, create your appointment types, create if you have multiple practitioners, and do all the heavy lifting, get the x-rays out, put them in the new patient account, get the documents out, put them in the new patient account, do all that stuff so that you and your team are focused on what matters most is training on the new system and how you're going to do what you do using the new platform. Because it's like anything else, when you're learning something new, what you learn in those first 90 days is probably 90% of what you'll ever learn in that system. Because, Genesis could do like a million different things. You're going to learn what you need to know to run your practice. Um, and so it's vital that you're not distracted and your team's not distracted and your revenue's not, dropping in the meantime because you're not focused on patients. It's vital that you have the time to focus on learning and your patients in the meantime and nothing else, as little as possible. So that white glove service has drastically changed the experience for our customers.
Yeah,
100%.
I think that was brilliant, for all the reasons that you said. And, with anytime a doctor we find in like 100-year lifestyle offices, when people implement the things that we teach, it is kind of like a new practice model. It's not really a new practice model, but, we always tell people that big visions include smaller ones, smaller visions don't include bigger ones. So if you just do a small vision, then you're constantly upselling.
Mhm.
So it's a mental shift to just present the bigger vision, giving people options. And people think, well, that's so hard to do. The reality of it is it takes much less time. And then if you eliminate all the upselling because people already choose it,
Mhm.
then you free up so much time on the back end, and the profit is much higher on the back end. And that, I think, is also true with what you're talking about with Genesis, because like in our practice, we could see 10 people in an hour come in, and it doesn't look like in the 31st minute, if in 30
Yeah.
minutes we saw 10 people, on the 31st minute, there's no sign of a human.
Yeah.
Like literally everything is like done.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's done. The note is done, the appointment's done, the check-in is done, the posted to their account, you run the payment or it's automatically run. It's like, so the capacity is off the charts
Mhm.
when you have an integrated system like what has been created. So yes, we've talked about the pain, talk about the pleasure.
Well, yeah, it is. It is. I didn't cover one thing about why companies are going into the cloud, but if we're going to talk about the pleasure, the economies of scale is a thing in business, and you should always, in my opinion, be building your business to be able to scale to a larger capacity. So whether or not you are there or it's going to be the next phase or whatever, you should be as efficient as you possibly can, right? So and I almost think like when we were building this thing, I almost kind of criticize myself like I'm being lazy because I wanted to automate everything. But and the same thing happened to me, even in the rudimentary version of what we're doing now. I found myself like we saw the patients and there was like I feel like I should be doing something else because in the past I had paper everywhere. I had all this stuff going on. My staff had 9 million manual steps. The patients would come in, the screen would come up, I adjust, they go home, and everything was done. Every single thing was done. And everybody knew because Genesis has this, single point management. It would tell my team if there were patients that whose care plans were about to expire or who missed a visit that they didn't reschedule it yet, or it was telling them this is the list of things to do, and they were just doing that stuff. They didn't have to ask me. I didn't feel like I was worried that they were dropping a ball anywhere because I knew the system was telling them what to do, and the patient's experience was they would just come and stay. It was a perfect scenario. Um, so the efficiencies, I don't know how to put it into words, but just everything is done in real time, and more.
Yeah, it's great. And so I don't have the memory capacity for all of the things that need to be remembered for each person that comes in. I don't think anybody on your team has the memory capacity for every single if you're doing any kind of volume at all. Uh, and if you're not doing volume, it's probably because you don't have the memory capacity to handle more than you're currently handling.
Mhm.
But when you have your system truly being the memory capacity for the functions that need to happen for every individual person, and the data is input properly, literally the first time, and it just frees everybody up on the team to focus on serving patients.
Yeah, and this I can bring this actually full circle. When we started Genesis, it was about it always comes back to purpose no matter what, right? So what it was about from day one was the patient's experience. Now, I met kind of like you had Sergio and I had my business partners, which were one was a CIO on Wall Street, Bell Labs scientist, PhD in mathematics, patents in AI. Another was a computer science graduate from Princeton. We were in Jersey. I met them. That's how I learned about the cloud and artificial intelligence and workflow automation and all this other stuff, you know, all those years ago. When I saw it, when you're a chiropractor, you see everything through like these chiropractic rose-colored glasses, but chiropractic, you only think one way, right? So I'm like, wow, that's kind of like a nervous system for if we were to apply that same kind of methodology to use and leverage that type of technology to help me at that time run my practice, it would be a game changer, not only for my team, but the patient's experience, how it changes their experience in your office when everything is buttoned up and done perfectly, and when there's a re-exam, it happens on time, or if they miss or they're prepared for it on time, they get it on time. They know that you know when it's coming, like you didn't miss it, which happens in practices. Like they know that they're supposed to have a re-exam at whatever visit, 10, 12 visits, and then it doesn't happen. Imagine their perception of of you and your practice, right? So make sure everything happens perfectly every single time in their experience was the goal. Now, that and to do that, we had to be in the cloud. We had to have workflow automation. We had to have artificial intelligence. That was the reason I would even go into this business to begin with, because I was a chiropractor. I am a chiropractor, but I was only going to open practices. That was my mission. I was going to save the world, right? But I saw this. When I saw this, I saw it as a way to serve more people through chiropractors, to actually help them increase capacity. Because if we really want to see the everybody should be seeing a chiropractor from the day they're born to the day they die, we don't have the capacity with the number of doctors that we have, right? We need either more doctors or more capacity or both. And to do that, the business has to be run like a machine. Why? Because we do have to make very good money to doing it. Why? Because who else is going to want to be a chiropractor if you're just going crazy running a small business and not making any money? Who would want to sign up for that? We have to attract people to the profession. You can give, you can love, you can serve, and you can have abundance. That's what's going to attract more chiropractors. And the technology is what's making it more efficient. Now, what's happening with technology that's moving into the cloud is that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to make more money in recurring revenue so they can sell to the next private equity firm. That's their purpose. So when your purpose is not aligned, you're going to piss a lot of people off.
Yeah, and that what you just described is happening because these companies that were in abundance are being forced to move into the cloud for survival.
Yeah.
And because they're moving because of survival, they are doing things, they're cutting corners, they don't have that bigger vision anymore. And, it's exciting because, you and I talk about being under chiropractic care from the time you're born to your last breath of life. And that has been our core value since
Yeah.
1997 when we met, right?
I remember when I heard it first time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so do me a favor, just because I think it's important if people don't understand why we are so aligned, talk about how we met.
Yeah. Man, it's just a God thing, but the way it like actually played out was Doc here and Doc's mom and my mom worked together in an office in New Jersey. And I was an undergrad bio major. I think it was my junior year, pretty sure it was my junior year. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew my cousin was a chiropractor. Had been to a chiropractor when I was a kid. In freshman year in college, I had a horrible rib head injury from high school football. Went to a chiropractor, he fixed it, all that exposure to chiropractic. And I go to undergrad, a biology major, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like my mom calls me one day, she said, "Hey, this woman that works with me, her son's a chiropractor, and he invited you to go hear him speak. He's gonna be speaking at the Meadowlands, whatever the event was." And I was like, okay, I'll go listen. And I went, and it was the first time I ever heard anything about the principle of chiropractic. Like nothing, all those other people, and I never heard anything about the principle. And when I heard it, it was like lightning through my body. That's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And I tell this to I went home, I told my girlfriend, I'm like, I am moving to Georgia after school. She's like, what are you talking about? Like, she was, can you imagine? Like, I went out for a couple hours, came home, I'm moving to Georgia. And she didn't obviously put the pieces together that, chiropractic school was in Georgia. So I just said Georgia, and then I had to fill her in on what just happened. And she wound up moving with me. We didn't actually get married or anything, but she actually came with me and went to life in Atlanta and, never looked back. It just was exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's exciting. And, when you told me that story, and I sadly did not know even that happened until we ran into each other years later. And here you are with your passion of technology for the same purpose that we have for educating people, that the way that you got educated, back then it was human potential program. Now it's 100-year lifestyle, much more the right message at the right time, still doing the same type of thing, changing people's lives through the chiropractors that we work with, and you doing the same thing, making it easier for people to process them as a business. And I do think that is a really important piece of it, because we want chiropractors to be purposeful and stay purposeful throughout their lifetime. And you talked about scaling a business. If you have a practice that's filled with lifetime patients, that is a highly scaled chiropractic business to sell compared to a practice that's got a PVA of 20 or 25. It's a totally different
100%.
ballgame. Much more
100%.
valuable practice. And we have a question here from Dr. Sleppy. He said, we struggle with multiple providers, multiple therapies, and managing care plan visit numbers accurately. So what would you say to Dr. Sleppy?
We know that problem very well, and have some great solutions. Not every practice is exactly the same on how they practice and the flow of patients and the workflow and how the care plans can be used. But that's a huge focus of ours because we have this many practices that are even multi-specialty, and they have to have visits be counted in different ways. Sometimes it's a code, sometimes it's just a check-in, sometimes it's this, and sometimes it's that. And you don't want to have multiple patient accounts just to be able to track them separately. You want to have one patient account, but a care plan that tracks all the different types of care separately. Um, so we have a solution for that. And actually we're revamping. This is a good example of where you can have something that's good and actually rebuild it in the background, and so it continues to improve over time. This is a big focus of ours because we're getting more and more and more of it. More chiros are bringing in other types of care. There's actually a big movement where now MDs are seeing it. They're getting it. They're like, we need to have chiropractors in here if we're really going to help these patients. In psychiatry and psychology and general medicine, they want to actually work together now. And they understand why. They're seeing the outcomes and they see the difference. So it's a huge focus of ours right now.
Yeah, I think it's great. And
So I'm sorry, Doc, if you want to just see that, you can schedule time. Go to genesischiropracticsoftware.com and just click and schedule and see what we have for that specific issue.
okay, so Dr. Sleppy, he asks a question: what if you live in the woods and you have to rub sticks together and do a dance to have internet service?
That's the only issue with the internet. If you're that rural, but you can run the whole system off your cell phone service. So in some cases, actually sometimes we suggest practices have what we used to call, when I worked in a restaurant, a crash box. When the computers used to go down, what do? You got all these servers and all this food and this, and usually you're able to put it in on a computer and everything was automated. Well, okay, that's great. What happens when the power goes out? Then we had a box and it had the old school tickets and we had a process and all that stuff. Well, with Genesis, remember, you don't have to have a server to run it. You just need any device really. To run a full practice, you need computers, but you can run the internet connection from your hotspot on your phone, assuming you can get decent cell phone service. And most providers, they don't advertise it in the stores anymore. They used to. They have a device that's just called a hotspot. And you could just plop that. You pay for like a cell phone service, and that's your internet connection.
Yeah, we just had that happen to us. We had right out front of our office is the transformer on the telephone pole. And boom, fire, bam, and it exploded. And we had no lights. The X-ray machine, we couldn't get it working. Genesis wasn't coming on, right?
Oh.
But then all of a sudden, Corey says to me, he says, well, let's use our hotspot and see if we can get it working. We got everything working with the hotspot. So
yeah, and in that case, if you don't have power for a while, you have a laptop, pop open the laptop, you're good for at least a few hours. We had this case where hurricane, I don't remember which area, but hurricanes come through and just wipe out a practice, like it's gone, right? But they still have their table, and then power comes back, and they're in business. Cell phone service and enough power to power a computer, and they're seeing patients in a tent in the parking lot, it's pretty awesome.
yeah, we had a great day. We were in the dark.
Yeah.
We adjusted a lot of people in the dark, ran everybody's everything, and we didn't skip a beat, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Dr. Adler's asking, is your software browser based, and do you use any plugins or any cut and paste features for macros?
So those are two different questions. It's 100% cloud-based, so you can use any browser. Firefox, I use Chrome, but what's called Safari, any browser, you're logging in. Imagine it's like online banking. You go to whateverbank.com, log in, you have your system, and you can go to a different browser on a different computer or a different device and log in just the same. So it's 100% cloud-based. The second question was
Do you use
macros.
any plugins or any cut and paste feature for macros?
I don't know what plugins means in that context, but macros, you can build your own. You can literally take a note that you have configured in your system, like a template or configuration, and cut and paste that into Genesis, the Flex Note system, and then build your macros from that. So you might have several templates that you use, but our note system is more sophisticated than that because you can customize the fields that you want, say in a subjective or objective or finding or range of motion or whatever, so that you can just those fields will carry forward throughout visits, even from your patient intake form that they can do on their app. They can do their app, it'll carry through to your new patient exam and narrative, and those can carry through. So you can customize your documentation to any way you want to do it.
Yeah, and I
But
think
use
maybe
that
what he
power.
means from plugin perspective, I think he's probably, you call them apps, maybe in this particular context, because we use Fortis, which is an app that integrates with
Oh,
Genesis
yeah,
seamlessly. We have a review software that integrates seamlessly, and there are a lot of different options for Posture Pro, I think, integrates, but you have
Posture Ray,
quite a few
Posture
of those.
Pro.
Let's call them integrations instead of plugins.
Yes, okay. Sorry, I didn't click with that. Plugins, I think of the browser plugin. So yes, we have a ton of integrations with payment processing, patient education, automation, review generation. Like you said, Posture Ray, Posture Screen, which are same company, two different products. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. We have a ton. We're actually also we're really focused on expanding our offering to marketing automation so that people like Doc that can create a ton of content for you, you can take that content and plug it into automations all the way up to the point of actually running your social ads, getting people engaged in nurture sequences, getting them to schedule and getting them into Genesis, and then nurturing that relationship in some automated ways. So we're expanding that way as well.
Okay, we have another question about somebody that has been using Genesis for a while, and he's spending a lot of time doing notes, 300 visits a week, needs ways and he customizes, personalizes every single note. What would you recommend are some ways that, he says he's tried to solve this problem. What would you recommend to help him solve this problem and streamline his note taking?
Okay, there's in Genesis, there are 3 documentation systems actually. There's a very old legacy one called XMR. That was our launching point. It was great, but requirements for documentation changed over time. So we built what's called a Supernote. Supernote is, it's like you can click and touch screen and it generates a narrative. Has a ton of benefits. It carries information from visit to visit. The latest version, which might be the best for you, and is the future actually, is the Flex Note, because you have similar functionality where you can point and click and change things fast, but you can also edit the narrative in real time, and you have macros and a whole bunch. So the latest version, I would say, is where you want to ask support. You can even just email questions at genesischiropracticsoftware.com, schedule a meeting, ask to schedule a meeting to see the Flex Note and how that might help your workflow.
Excellent. Very good. Anybody else? Questions, comments? We get a lot of questions on this, Brian. A lot of questions. This is really a big deal. And you know what's exciting to me? Because I mean, like you are about scaling the profession. Our vision, we are like, we want the entire world lining up for chiropractic care from the time they're born to their last breath of life, 100% for 100 years. That's what's behind me. And we've been a stand for that. And when you start to really implement things like what you're doing and what you're helping us all do, in the world which is high tech, you have to do it. I mean, in the old days, I remember travel cards, and we never, we just, it didn't matter. Well, it matters now. You know, people would say, "Oh, I like the old days where box on the wall," but no, then you didn't get paid either. You know,
right.
So it's an exciting thing for people to embrace the technology. If people wanted to try it or demo it, what's the best way for them to do it? How can people engage? I know some people are slow to make a decision. Some people are crisis motivated and they're like, oh, I can't stand it anymore. And some people are just, you know what? I know I need to make this change. Let's do it before I have a crisis. What do you suggest that people do?
The best thing is just go to the website, genesischiropracticsoftware.com, and you'll see in multiple places schedule a demo. That's it. It'll give you, you get to pick what day is good for you. It'll give you the times available. You pick the time, you schedule, and it'll send you the link. You'll get a Zoom call with one of my consultants, and they're awesome. They're going to ask you a lot about your practice and how you do things, so they don't try to show you everything all at once. So they show you the things that matter to you most. There's always time to go over those new, like you said, add-ons or plugins and all those other things, but they'll show you what matters most as fast as possible. That's the easiest way to get in.
Yeah, and I think one thing, if you are going to, you don't really need to understand everything about how the software works. You just have to say, this is what I want to be able to do. And if you could define, this is what I want to be able to do, then you could have the team at Genesis set up the system, help you, especially if you're white gloving it, to help get you set up to do exactly what you wanted to do.
Yeah, the only one thing I would say about that, Doc, which you're 100% right. The only thing is, a lot of times people don't know or realize or think about Genesis in this other way. We also have a number of clients that continue to use their own technology, whatever one that is from the legacy, and we do their medical billing for them still. So they leverage the automation and workflow and transparency in the cloud for their, I know not majority of your practice is probably cash, but if you do insurance at all, you can still outsource your insurance portion to Genesis. And that's a lot of times a stepping stone. So that you might want to switch everything, but not everything all at once. And that's a one step toward doing that. You can do that too.
Excellent. Very good. Well, listen, I just want to give you extra vote of confidence here. Not that you need it. You carry yourself. You represent well. Proud to call you a friend. I just got recommended by you to go speak at Ultimate Achievers Club, which was fantastic experience in a room with high achievers, and to be able to inspire them through this vision and to see how all these high achievers talk about you and what you're doing is really important. So
thank you.
I'm very honored and proud to work side by side with you in this vision, and together we accomplish so much more. And here's Bill Henry. Are you going to be at New Beginnings in May?
I will not be, unfortunately, but I got my start at New Beginnings, actually. We used to go up there. I'm from Jersey, and we used to drive, I have students. We used to have like literally a van, like packed into a van and drive back and forth to New Beginnings. I love New Beginnings. It's a great spot, a great crew, great people. I
Yeah.
miss it actually, but I won't be there this May.
Well, I will, Bill, so I'll see you there.
Uh,
All right, Brian, closing comments. Really appreciate you taking the time as always. We're going to make this available, obviously in our vault. For those of you that are 100-year lifestyle chiropractors, if you're listening to this, we're going to make it available to everybody. If you're listening to this and you're not part of the 100-year lifestyle, I hope you come check out what we're doing. If you want to fill your practice with lifetime patients and lead your community with this vision of healthy longevity from the time you're born all the way throughout life, chiropractic care is a part of a lifestyle. We'd love to help you reach that goal. Brian, talk, close us, take us home.
Well, I'm excited for the future. There's been a lot of big events in the life of Genesis, and this time is there's never been a better time. We have a lot we are launching and rolling out for our customers. We're probably growing 5 times what we were a couple of years ago, and I would like to tell you that none of it would be possible if it weren't for you just teaching the purpose and just being inspiring to others. So I want to thank you.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to serve, and we're just getting started too. Our
Yeah,
100-year lifestyle certification program through Life University kicks off in May at our seminar, May 4th and 5th. We'd love
I'm
to see all
excited.
of you there. It's going to be fantastic. I think Brian's going to be there actually.
I will be there,
All right.
100%.
Very good. So great time to tour the software if you want to, and just have some great conversations, get to know each other. Look forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody at Genesis. Thanks everybody for being on the line, and we'll see you next time.
Love you, Doc.